a great panel to have in terms of talking about this. So let's just start off with introductions. Fabiano, if you want to start, just talk a little bit who you are, what company you're from, and then what is like the next iteration or next iterative thing about the NFT space that excites you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Hi everyone, my name is Fabiano. I'm from Collection. I come from Vancouver. I started working in this space in 2019 at the team of CryptoKitties. That was before Dapper Labs, so just when we were creating Dapper Labs. And around the same time, I worked with dear Shirley, who's the CTO of Dapper, and we created the non-fungible standard, ERC 721, that gave the name NFT. So yeah, that was my first time on the space. And then also I worked as a research engineer for Flow Network. Last year I met Daisuke Iwase together with Jeff Miyahara, and we're very lucky that the timing matched, and we created Collection, which is a company focused on fandom. We work with some of the big IPs in Japan. We're very excited about this space. Yeah, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Gideon.
Clap first, yeah.
Hi, my name is Gideon. I work for OpenSea. We're obviously one of the marketplaces for NFTs. I joined last year in March when the company was a lot smaller, only 15 people. And obviously it's been quite a ride to see and meet everyone over the past year. And really excited to be here. Personally, for the future of NFTs, I'm really excited about the potential of soulbound tokens, Vitalik's recent white paper. So I think that'll have some really interesting applications for education and also all sorts of blockchain apps.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Wombo. We're operating at the intersection of AI and media, so our products help people make awesome content using AI. They've been downloaded by over 130 million people in the past 14 months, and sort of central to what we do is taking a complicated technology and packaging that up into something that's easy for the average person to use. We've done that with AI, and now we're looking at how to do that with NFTs. So what I'm really excited about is, NFTs so far have really just been something for crypto natives, and it's starting to expand from that, but still has quite a small user base. I'm excited about, building the products and finding ways to bring us to the next billion people.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm the founder of SoulSniper.xyz. We're a trading and analytics website for Solana NFTs. I'm personally really excited about NFTs because for me, that's actually how I got into crypto about 6 months ago. I think NFTs are a really great way for consumer onboarding. I don't think users want to be yield farming shitcoins. I think they want to be exchanging value from creators. And I think what's really exciting is like the trading and the exchanging of value and like having these traders basically be able to kind of exchange and also like arbitrage against the value that's created by creators. So that's what I'm excited about with NFTs.
Awesome, thank you. So let's take Max and Ben, both of your kind of points about, kind of the state where we are today, where, MetaMask has 30 million MAU, right? Like, it's not a huge crowd yet, right? Like, obviously there's a lot of excitement over the topic, but if you look at the past history of the internet, we needed to reach about 1 billion users to get to a Facebook, right? To get to scale, right? And then 2 billion to get to Uber, Airbnb. Like, what are some of the things that we have to work on, each individual company here, but also as an industry to help onboard the next billion users? Is it to focus on, going after a layman user, or is it, do we still want to focus on, finding new and interesting use cases? Who wants to start with this one?
I think I can start.
Yeah.
I think definitely like it's a combination of both. I think like a big reason why like I was really attracted to Solana is it was a great customer experience. Users are able to make transactions that settle very quickly and they don't pay high fees. So I think like that's definitely part of it, but I think the part of it that we're working on is actually innovating really hard on how we can like bring like a completely new experience to trading NFTs and exchanging value from creators. So like that's really like the problems that we focus on, and like we get great feedback from customers where like they have a lot more fun and it actually drives more engagement because we built such a great platform for the users to enjoy like actually trading and analyzing and charting. I think it's a combination of both decreasing the friction to get into the space and then also building that like amazing engagement for the users.
Yeah, just and everybody just feel free to pitch in. Like, I'm not going to just like ask a bunch of questions. Like, this should be a free-flowing conversation. So.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think has been holding the NFT space back from mass adoption is essentially every project has this speculative financial upside baked into it, which is, why do you buy an NFT? You buy an NFT because you hope that it's going to 5 to 10x in value and you're going to make money on it. And I think the reality of the situation is normies are not spending their time gambling, basically. And so if we want NFTs to reach the masses, if we want NFTs to have 1 billion users, you need a use case that is not about speculative financial upside. And I do think that's possible with NFTs. And I think the amazing thing about NFTs is they make ownership of a digital object psychologically legitimate. So you own some JPEG or something, and you feel like, hey, you really own that thing, like it's yours, it belongs to you, the provenance is there. So that's what we're looking at really closely, which is how do we make people care about owning their NFTs without, the potential for those NFTs to 5 to 10x in value, because that's not the only thing that matters.
Yeah, thank you. I want to expand a little bit on the same point, which is I find at Collection, like we think very similarly, as in we care about NFTs as the potential they enable for human connection more than anything. So we focus on the fandom space, where the focus is really not the financial aspect, but the connection between the fan and the artist they really care about. So buying an NFT from Collection is really about participating on the space and joining for the perks, for utility, for AMA with the artist. So yeah, it very much resonates with me, and that's how we think about mass adoption as well, being following that trend.
Yeah, I think the thing that's holding things back right now, and I think, to Max's point about Solana's done a great job of onboarding people, also because the wallet, the wallet UI has been such a big jump from, Ethereum, wallets like Phantom and so forth. I think once you can really make that a lot more accessible and easier for your everyday users and new consumers, I would expect adoption to be more commonplace. I mean, for example, StepN, I'm sure a lot of us have used StepN. StepN's been really good because it abstracted away the technical part of operating a wallet, and so everyone can use it. You're using an app, but the app is also a wallet. Once that becomes very commonplace, I think that's when we'll start to hit some of the MAUs you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I think the group hit on two really good points here. One is that the NFT space, the Web3 space, is a back-end evolution, right? This is significantly changing how we view ownership in the digital economy, right? And I think, Ben, to your point about ownership, that's a huge piece that never existed before. And if you imagine every single piece of physical product here today is ownable, right? But because everything is ownable, some things don't have that high of price, right? Most things in the world aren't speculative, but because this is such a new concept in today's world right now of NFTs, it has to become speculative first, right? And so I think we're finally seeing people, come off of this and start to realize what are the next kind of use cases here. And so that's exactly where I want to go. What are some of the most interesting use cases you've seen? I've seen some dynamic NFTs popping up. I've seen some in game use. What are some of the next iterations of NFTs, both from a tech perspective, back-end tech perspective, but also, whether if it's games, whether if it's any other place, interesting places you have seen it.
Yeah, I can definitely jump into that because we analyze like all the NFTs on Solana. I would definitely say just to bring up the point about like the speculation. I think like it doesn't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. I think like that's part of the fun of ownership. Like you own a house and it grows in value, but you can also live in it. So I think like in terms of utility, like some things we've seen are like actually this is a really interesting use case where people use tokens to gate a software product. So like a SaaS model, but with an NFT. So that's something we've seen like a decent amount of on Solana. I think another really kind of like some verticals that I'm personally like keeping an eye on are definitely one art. I think like there's these kind of big art marketplaces that are cropping up. And then obviously I think the other big one that isn't really at maturity, but is definitely gaining in maturity is gaming. Like I think everybody talks about gaming. There's a ton of investments that's been flooded into gaming, and I really see it's only going to be a matter of time before the infrastructure and like the actual games themselves like are of very high value. So I think those are some like verticals that I'm looking at, but like I'm very curious to hear like what other verticals you guys are have an eye on.
I think to give a little context, I think it was $8 billion in blockchain games investments in 2021. So a lot of money flowing. Before we get into other panelists here, like Max, can you expand a little bit on kind of the SaaS, the software side that you were talking about in terms of token gating there?
Yeah, it's like something that I've actually seen with like similar products to my own product, and like our users sometimes ask me about it, but it's this idea where like you have to own a Soul Sniper NFT in order to use Soul Sniper. So I've actually seen that. I think there's like a new concept that's being created on Solana. It's called X NFTs as well, and so that X stands for executable. I haven't seen it in action, but like we've seen kind of like the Solana team get really excited about that. And then the other like kind of big vertical that I just kind of thought about that hasn't really been like kind of talked about is actually with the expansion to mobile. I think there's a lot of really interesting things people plan on doing with mobile with NFTs that like right now, like if you like look up any kind of NFT app, like maybe besides like StepIn, it's actually really immature. So I think mobile as well is going to be really big.
That's great.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. One of the things people are talking a lot about from the AI side right now is content authenticity. So say you're watching a video of like Obama or something. How do you know that that's actually a video of Obama and not a deep fake made by some AI? And I actually think like a Web3 blockchain-based solution makes a lot of sense here, where you can take any piece of content, feed it into some open source tool, and almost get back like a provenance of it. Of like, okay, where did this piece of content come from? How was it made? Which tool was used to make it? When was it published to the internet? And, you know, it's almost like, you know, you go to any supermarket and you pick up a product and you can look at the back and see what are the ingredients that were used to make that product. I think in the next decade we'll need something like that for any kind of media that you find online because of how rapidly these AI technologies are advancing. And I fully expect that the best solutions to this are going to be blockchain based.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in as well. So for us, the provenance is very important. Having certifiable NFTs is really the key of what we do. When a fan goes and buy an NFT from an artist, the last thing they want is the knockoff, right? So they really want to have the thing that Miyavi really created together with someone, or Gesu no Okiwami Otome, like created together. So we really need the customization aspect of it. The way I see going forward is that we'll have more and more customized NFTs towards that audience. That's something that really connects with the fan. And you know, like there is also the customization aspect again. So what makes NFTs really cool is that it's a digital piece, right? Unlike a table that you cannot really customize, an NFT can be programmable, right? So that's really a cool part. It's not only Solana, like Solana is jumping on it. One thing that I always really wanted to see is that since we started CryptoKitties, we had basically the ERC 721 also had metadata. It had genetic data on it, so you could breed two cats. You could make something like a game, right? So we had that insight back then, but now we're seeing a lot of collections about PFPs, which is cool. It's really cool. It's what the market has a lot of appetite for. But still, like, I would like to push this boundary forward, right, with more programmable, more customizable NFTs.
I think right now a lot of what everyone's been focused on, or what's very relevant now, is IRL, right? So a lot of people have been curating online friendships for the last 2 years, and now that restrictions are loosening up everywhere, you're going to start to have a lot more like token-gated experiences. And I think once that becomes normalized, where you go to a concert, you go to a show, you have a record of it, you connect with the people that were there, I think once we normalize that, like, that's going to make NFTs even more mainstream. Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the token gating, customization, certifying, all that, I think, is something that was never been able, like, you can never do that, right? Like, and I think, especially with token gating, I think the next step, the next iteration we're going to start seeing, and I think we've started to see some, Web3 marketing pack companies starting to pop up, but it's actually not just looking at one NFT, right? Saying if a holder has one NFT, but interpreting the entire wallet itself. Like, have you guys seen anything interesting in, like, trying to understand wallets better, trying to understand multiple NFTs together? Like, how far off are we from that? Like, that seems a little bit farther away as well, but.
Yeah, I mean, they have all those, like fees WTF, which, like, if you enter your address, tells you how much gas you've wasted over the past year, right? So there's, like, fun stuff like that, and obviously it's always cool when I meet someone who's been in this space for a while, and, I say, oh, what's your ENS name? I look it up, and it's like, oh, they have a Snow Yeti or some, like, really obscure project. You're like, okay, you've been in it a long time. So in terms of tools, like, I think that's starting to more come into play, but definitely wallet analysis is going to be a huge thing in the future.
Yeah, and that's like something that we already do, is like we like give users like a portfolio view of like their wallets, their P&Ls, exporting those things and like doing their taxes, like so it's definitely something that like it's definitely growing and evolving. I think like what is potentially like really interesting, like kind of touching back on like what you were talking about with the token gating experience, is actually kind of like using these tokens to like verify like real life like authenticity, and like potentially like doing that in combination, I think would be really interesting as well.
For us, like when we think about stems, K-pop fans or J-pop fans, that is a huge part of their identity. So for us, like the NFTs they collect, we're working on to create like a really cool user profile that really reflects who you are on the space. So 100%. I think that's really spot on. And I think that's also one key of mass adoption, right? Like how you represent yourself in the digital space. If we're going to a direction that is going to be as ubiquitous as Facebook, I believe. So, what NFTs you have and what you collect, the places you attended really are the things you want to show as your personality.
Yeah, I think, Fabiano, you made a great point there about like NFTs show who you are, right? And I think they do it in very specific ways. So in terms of community perspective, they show which community you're in, right? So let's say I'm a Clone X holder, I'm a Doodles holder, or I'm a Bored Apes holder, and then it shows how much you stand out within that community, what specific Bored Apes you have, how rare is it, how not rare is it, how many you have, right? And I think there's very different ways of being able to kind of express yourself through NFTs. And I think, Fabiana, as you were talking about with, the original goal with like CryptoKitties, breeding, kind of creating new types of, NFTs, like having it change, right? Because if you look at the original history of the internet, right, we first had articles come up, which was just the same as, newspapers, right? And then we finally figured out we can add code into websites, right? And this is, I think we're seeing the same iteration here. And in terms of how this evolves, like, I've seen some NFTs, like, depending on how many you mint, if you mint NFTs, you grow a flower garden, right? I think a lot of it's very simple right now. Like, what is the goal here in terms of, like, I'm trying to like let's imagine together, right? Like what is like the next iteration of what a really interesting NFT would look like? I know this is a slightly harder question.
I mean, I think we're still in the, skeuomorphic phase, right? Like you said, everything NFT so far has been just resembling or recreating what's already existing in the world. I think we're going to be in that phase until everybody has, it's like, having a Facebook or Instagram account is very commonplace. Having an NFT or having your OpenSea or, people or your wallet is going to be like common knowledge. Like, that'll be the first thing that people go to. Until we get out of that phase, I think, I would expect we're going to still be recreating what's around us.
I think that makes sense. And let's shift a little bit to tools, because, I think, everyone here to some extent has created tools around kind of this space. Like, I think there's still a lot of, like, where do you find a lot of, like, demand for right now? I think security might be one of them, right? And I think analysis, I think we've started to see some, and obviously with Soul Sniper, we've seen a bunch of iterations of this. Like, what are some spaces in kind of the tooling, NFT tooling space that you would like to see, or you have seen that looks really interesting to you?
Yeah, so in our case, we're looking at content creation. Typically what's happening with NFTs today is somebody else has made a collection with 10,000 items in it, and either you participate early in the mint and hope you get lucky and you get a good one, or you buy one later that you like, but you're not creating the content yourself. So one of the shifts I think we're going to see is people are going to be creating their own NFTs that maybe they never intend on trading, or they never intend on selling ever again. And yeah, this is what we're looking at in Wabo. We want to enable people to make the highest quality, best content they can, and then if they choose to mint it and sort of immortalize it or highlight it in the NFT format, then they'll be able to do that in a very easy and straightforward way.
You guys want to expand on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, for us, at Collection, the interesting thing for us is that we really bank on the authenticity of the content, which I really appreciate OpenSea for, like, really pushing the space forward more, than pretty much anyone else. But the harder part is that authenticity for us and for the fans is going to become increasingly important, right? Like, right now, we're like in the really new stage, the really young phase of the NFTs and everything. So yeah, for us, like, we're trying to find the right balance between how hard it should be or how customized it should be to create the NFT, and how much we want to give this power to the creator themselves, right? So there is this very interesting balance where there's the offline work to make interesting content, to make the utility and make things fit, and then the mass adoption phase of it is interesting to play together.
Yeah, and I would like to jump in here, like, with kind of like the mass adoption phase. Like, I think something that's like really interesting that I've seen is like, and this is more actually about Ethereum NFTs than Solana NFTs, is that like they're culturally very important. Like, I think like having a Bored Ape Yacht Club these days is like kind of like the highest echelon of like, I don't know what you want to call it, like blue chip or exclusivity, or like why are those, like, so like the way I kind of see it is like we have this kind of like content where maybe you mint it once, you really love this art piece and you hold on to it forever, but then there's the other side of things where people are kind of constantly exchanging value and like finding like the price for these things, and it's based off of like the utility and the exclusivity that these NFTs provide. So like even though like some people might argue like, oh, like Bored Ape Yacht Club, like they don't really like, build a ton of software, for example. What they do is like they have Ape Fest, and it's like probably like the most amazing festival you can be a part of, and like you can only like, see Future and Little Baby if you have a Bored Ape Yacht Club. So it's one of those things where I think that there's many angles actually to like the value of NFTs as well.
I think, Max, you made an absolutely amazing point there, because I think NFTs, if you view it in a different way, it's encoding culture as a data set, right? And like that's like, it's been hard to do that, and I think you're absolutely right. If you look at like Supreme, for example, right? Like, is Supreme like is the T-shirt like, is it the same quality as like, I don't know, like some other like T-shirt? it might be, maybe it's not, right? Like, is it worth that much? That's part of the brand, that's part of the culture that they've built up, and part of the reason why they're valued in culture is like partially speculative as well, right? People trade it, and so that increases the value of it, and people understand that's important. They want to be part of that club, right? So I think it's a mix of both, right? Like, I think we don't want to, like, maybe not too speculative, but like we need some of that in terms of how to create.
Yeah, anything that's high value is going to be speculative to some degree, right? Like, that's just like the nature of being high value. And it's really interesting because it really, like, philosophically, it goes to like how do humans assign value to things. And I think NFTs really kind of like change the way we think about it, because like, you know, like a lot of people will joke like, oh, it's just JPEGs on the internet, but it's because like, you know, X amount of people said this is worth 1 ETH or 100 SOL, that's what it's worth. So yeah, I think that's really kind of like the beautiful part of NFTs is it philosophically challenges you to think about like how you want to value like things that you own.
And I think this has been going on, though, right? Like, this isn't just a new phenomenon that just sprung up. Like, Pokemon cards were at all-time highs last year and the year before, right? If you look at it, they're just a piece of paper, right? But they have an inherent value incorporated in them because of, you know, the IP that represents the brand it represents. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think the culture is going to be key there. I do want to get on two topics here. One is the soulbound tokens that you mentioned, and I think another one is a little about the AI side, how AI can be incorporated into kind of NFTs. Let's start with soulbound. I think pros, cons, like I think there are cons to this. Who wants to start here in terms of what they think is good and what they think is bad about soulbound tokens?
Yeah, well, I think you know, people always ask me, like, why do I need an NFT? And, you know, my dad would be like, well, it's just a certificate. I'm like, well, kind of, to some extent, right? But actually, if we think about kind of, like I said, onboarding the next wave of users, you know, how do I know that you've actually done this thing or learned this thing? Well, if you have a soulbound token and it's only achievable by doing task A and task B, then I know for sure that you've done those things. And I think we've talked a lot about like speculation today. You're totally removing that from the discussion and focusing on things that are achievement-based. So I think that is just going to really help with like on-chain reputation, and it's ultimately NFTs are all about digital property rights and on-chain reputation.
I want to riff a bit on that, so play the devil's advocate on Soulbound a little bit, because Soulbound is really interesting, and you know, like Vitalik mentioned this idea of the tokens. So for the people who don't know, are the tokens NFTs that you cannot trade. Right. So therefore, I don't know, maybe Max can talk about the value of it, but I don't know how to value them. I guess it's not.
Yeah, I think like that's kind of the point. Like, I actually think like something really interesting for like creators, for example, is like, and I think about this like from like as a creator of software, it's like perhaps I want to reward my like early like, you know, fans or like the early adopters, but like I don't want them to necessarily be like trading it as an asset, right? It's like SBTs are really interesting because then you can say like, hey, like, you know, like you guys are my OGs and like nobody can take that away from you and you can't give it to anybody else either. So I think it's like soulbound, like I think you basically remove the speculative asset of it, but I think that like it does like unlock new possibilities and like potentially for creators, like this is a really valuable tool to be able to reward your like most loyal fans as well.
Yeah, I believe like in that sense, if you have a diploma from your college or university, yes, you shouldn't be able to give it or sell it to anyone, right? It is yours, you earned it. So there's that aspect of it. What I'd like to think about more, and I think it requires a lot of thinking on this, is that for soulbounds to really work, soulbounds are really only good as the wallet that holds it, right? So right now we have a lot of difficulties in the space, which are completely normal. But for instance, if you lose your MetaMask seed phrase, then you're gonna lose your university certificate that you worked 4 years for, right? Like people are, you know, that's the dark side of it. So I don't want to index too much on that, but I do want to say that to get really good adoption on Soulbound and the whole technology aspect of it, and crypto in general, like we do need really good wallets. There's the book from Peter Thiel who talks, 0 to 1 book. It's an excellent book, right? It talks about how you need, for people to adopt a new technology as an alternative, you need something to be at least 10 times better. Either it's 10 times cheaper, 10 times easier to use, 10 times more appealing in any way. So I really like this Soulbound version, and I think our wallets are not there yet. They're definitely like making a lot of progress. It's a very difficult space, but very excited for it as well.
Should we be able to reject Soulbound tokens? Like if let's say, I'm part of this DAO or whatever service, I'm a contributor, I've contributed enough to get a Soulbound token, but maybe I don't want to show that I'm part of that community, right? Like, should we solve that by having multiple wallets, or should we potentially be able to hide different NFTs, like, or should we be able to reject Soulbound tokens? I think part of the issue with Soulbound tokens is that you can't trade them away, right? And so, like, it's nice if it's a university diploma, but what if you happen to be a contributor for an adult site, right? But you don't want to show that, right? Potentially, maybe you do. but if you don't want to show that, but if you get a Soulbound token saying you're a major contributor there, that might be embarrassing for you, right? And so, like, what is the solution to that? So I'm getting some blanks here.
There are like more interesting zero proof knowledge that you could use, that you could link a particular item to a particular wallet only when it's convenient and review part of the proof. But I think that, we're just talking how wallets are not there yet for the very basic use case of, retrieving your wallet back, right? So I think that's one step forward. Is selective privacy of your assets is very important. Things like Zcash, Monero, right? They work on privacy oriented. So if you share the read key with anyone, they're actually able to see how much you have in your wallet. There will be more things like that, I believe.
I think that makes sense. Let's shift kind of gears to AI and how AI can be applied to NFTs. And Ben, if you want to kind of jump in here first, I think there's a lot of different applications we can talk about a bunch today. In terms of Wombo does AI content generation, right? And so how do you view kind of AI kind of affecting how we view NFTs, how we interact with NFTs, how we create, or how we use NFTs in general?
So excuse me. I view AI as a bridge between the physical and the digital world. And so, as you increasingly start spending more time in the digital world, as people, spend more time on their phones or in the metaverse or any of those sorts of places, and they need to populate those worlds with content, if you don't know how to use Photoshop, if you're not an artist, if you're not a 3D artist that's going to go into Blender, you still need a way to make high quality personalized content, and most likely you'll be doing that with AI. And NFTs are just a way to, package up some content that you make and say, hey, this is mine, it was made by me on X date. And so I think in a gaming context, this is going to happen a lot, where if you are making your own skins or you're creating your own character, all of those in-game assets are going to be sort of superpowered through AI, and the provenance is going to come from NFTs. We're mainly thinking about this from the content creation side.
I think you touched on a really good point there. I wanted to expand on this idea of taking a skin, for example, and then being able to have that skin wrap around any type of NFT, right? For example, right? It can you can wear it as a Bored Ape NFT, you can wear it as a Doodles NFT, you can wear it as a Clone X, or as a dragon, or as a human. I think that's another iteration, I think, that's interesting. And then I think this thing you said about AI content creation, that, is going to help onboard a lot more people onto the space, right? Because we need more creators in specifically in the NFT space, but in general, in metaverse and NFT, all that. Yeah.
Right, so a user might have a specific style, and that style can be applied to any piece of content. I think that's a great idea.
We'll see who builds it. I think it's a little bit tough. I think Roblox has some version of it, and I think Mark from Meta is definitely thinking about this area as well. In terms of how, are there any like aspects where for like OpenSea or for like SoulSniper that you guys use kind of AI in terms of how to better the experience itself, or is.
We've, in the past 6 months especially, we've had a huge effort from the trust and safety side of things, where we're using a lot more proprietary software to help prevent users from buying fake NFTs and so forth. So that's an ongoing effort, and ultimately for us, trust comes first. So unless you have an experience that you can trust what you're getting, you're not going to want to use any marketplace, right? So it's a priority for us for sure.
Yeah, and on the SoulSniper side, we actually use machine learning as well on building out AI-based trading signals. We ran an experiment a couple months ago where we were able to basically create a model and basically just fed it all of our data, and then we were able to tell you with 80% confidence whether or not the price would go up or the price would go down. We didn't release this feature, but I think it's definitely something that we've been tinkering with and thinking about.
I think that makes sense. And a follow-up for Max here, this is less on kind of the AI side, but doing analytics for it's a relatively big data set with Solana. How difficult is it ingesting all that data in terms of potentially cleaning up some of that data as well to fit your kind of analytics platform and then serving that to users?
It's not easy.
It's a great answer. Let's go a little bit into Japan's a little bit Japan specific talks here. Japan obviously has some of the world's top IPs, anime in terms of everything, right? But Japan obviously has been a little bit late to the game. I think part of the issue is that a lot of Japanese IP holders are very hesitant in terms of allowing kind of users to kind of freely trade or potentially build on top of their ecosystems. And what is the best way to convince more and more Japanese IP holders or Japanese creatives in general, right? Maybe the answer is not to go to top down but bottom up. What is the answer here? And Fabian, I think you're perfect here to answer this.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we do work with a couple big Japanese IPs like Kodansha and famous musicians as well, like Miyavi, Gesu, and others on the pipeline as well that we cannot review just yet. But yeah, so it's super interesting because I don't think that's an exclusive problem to Japanese IP. I think any IP that's sufficiently big, they will be protective about it, right? Similar thing when at Dapper Labs we work with NBA. The partnership took years to actually take shape into a product that they're comfortable with. So I would say, on your point, really, why should you do it? Is that really the wrong answer is to not do it, right? On the long term, if you don't play the game, it's probably not a good thing from your company. So how we advise and how we kind of work with this big IP is that we work with something they are comfortable to start with, and we work something that more or less in their comfort zone, and then try to expand it into more interesting things as we go. But really, the market has appetite right now. It's still we're so early on, as you said. The market has appetite for very simple, straightforward things. So it's not really necessary to stretch it too much. So yeah, work together with a partner that you're comfortable with, and you can take it from there, experiment and learn.
Yeah, I've met with a few, traditional companies, IP holders. I think they're very hesitant, like you say, because it's big IP, and they want to have a success case first. In some cases, they want to use IP, but there's licensing restrictions, a lot of stakeholders involved. So one possible solution, which people talked about, is maybe you use the same creative team, talented artists, and you say, oh, this is, for example, from the creator of Dragon Ball Z, and then you make this new IP, which you don't have any of those restrictions, you don't have any of the expectations from the original fans, who you also have to educate how to use MetaMask or how to use Phantom and stuff, so a lot of hurdles there. And then also I think like in some cases, some of these, I've talked to some artists and they're beholden to, their board members who would be very lucky if they know what a blockchain is, or they're like, oh, why don't we use, Line, because they have their own blockchain and the distribution's already there. So there's a lot of like things hurdles you have to jump through.
No, I think you guys are absolutely right. And then in terms of like going back a little bit, because I think we're starting to talk about kind of onboarding users again. Each one of you here has to onboard a bunch of users, and a lot of them haven't used NFTs or haven't used it at all. Some have used it a little bit, some have used it a lot. Education obviously is huge here. Like how, has each of you in each of your companies kind of strive to get more and more users educated in this space to essentially onboard the next, 100 million and billion users?
Yeah, coming from CryptoKitties, something we saw is that people really get caught up at the point of installing MetaMask, backup in their private key, getting the Ethereum, because if you're in the United States, you can just put your credit card and it's relatively straightforward. Other regions, not so much. So you have to do KYC and all that. When we started Collection, the first thing we did is that we implemented the PayPal solution. So users can buy a PayPal and we mint to them in Flow. So that was our way of, not having to deal with the education aspect. Now, an interesting counterpoint is that now working with GIS, we're working with generative art, and we have our collection on OpenSea as well, which is really cool. But then it comes back the whole point about user education. So you have to tell about the users, if I'm just a Web2 fan and I want to get my GIS to NFT, which is called Maru, by the way, then, we have to do the whole education aspect of it. So yeah, it's a difficult problem. It's definitely a difficult problem. And I think it goes back a little bit to the wallet as well. There's a lot of effort into making wallets easier to use, but we're not exactly there yet.
Yeah. On the wallet point, one of the predictions I'll make is, actually you already have a wallet on your phone. And if you just click two buttons, you can pop your Visa card up. So I think within a few years, most likely your Apple wallet or your Samsung wallet or whatever is going to hold a bunch of your NFTs too. On the education side, I definitely think it's important to educate people and, make sure they're not giving their seed phrases away and getting scammed and all that. But at some level, I think your product really succeeds if you don't have to educate your user at all. And just by using your product, they sort of by default are protected. So I hope that we figure that out as well.
I think wallet security is probably the biggest issue with onboarding people, and I agree with the point that wallets are the bottleneck. I think one possible way is we're going to see the popularity of Guardian, I think they're called friendship-based wallets like Argent, where if you lose your password, you can nominate 3 buddies and they can come rescue you, right? And seeing systems like that which can help you recover without that kind of catastrophic loss. In terms of education, when I meet someone, I'm onboarding them. Honestly, I will help them set up a MetaMask. I'll send them an NFT and be like, "Congrats, you now own this." So I think until you get your hands dirty and start getting into that spirit of collecting, spirit of owning, you're not going to really learn. You can read all the articles and watch all the YouTube videos, but you really just have to get started.
So it does look like wallets is a pretty big barrier we have to kind of break through. One, should we even call them wallets? Because originally they were called wallets because it's transactional, right? But now, potentially with this next iteration of Wallet 2.0, 3.0, you can see more and more kind of expression or different kind of behaviors with wallets themselves or communicating different things. One, should they be called wallets? Let's see, if you guys have a better term for it, we'd love to know. And then 2, what does the next iteration of wallets look like?
Yeah, so in our case, I'm not sure about calling them wallets or not, but I can tell you how we're approaching this question at Wabo. When the user signs up for a Dream account, we automatically create a wallet for them and link that wallet to their account, so they don't have to worry about the whole process of, going through the seed phrase and downloading MetaMask. They just automatically have a wallet. It's connected to their account, and when they mint NFTs, it just gets sent to that wallet. This isn't the perfect solution. It's not like a completely trustless solution either, but this is the solution that we've chosen in terms of the balance of ease of use and bringing on a bunch of new users into the ecosystem.
Yeah, correct. At Collection, we also don't call, or we don't want to go the wallet way. We want to really think about Collection, where the name came from. So we want to have the user profile being their image, right? Not so much, we don't focus on how much balance you have. In fact, you cannot have stored balance in Collection, but you can have your NFTs that they're the things that matter to you.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing we're probably going to start to see is how when we open wallets right now, you see your balance, you might see some NFTs. How does that change in the future, right? Is it going to be more like a room where in your room you might have a poster of something that you're really proud of, but you also own things that you might put in your drawer that maybe you're interested in having, but you don't show it to everybody, right? And so I think right now in wallets for example in a MetaMask or in a Phantom wallet, there is no priority of what's important to you, what's not important to you, right? So I think having that sense of identity is potentially another kind of step.
I think you touched on a good point, which is we've done a lot of collecting over the past year, but we're only just starting to curate. OpenSea, we recently added some new features which users can now kind of curate their own profile. And I think if you're trying to onboard the next few people, you're going to want to probably have more NFT shows where almost everyone can be a curator, and maybe it's curating a space, maybe this is my wallet, like you said, these are my favorite picks. That's going to probably help draw attention to what's the latest NFT collection, or maybe the coolest game, the coolest leaderboard of the best players on that game, and so forth.
Yeah, I think following up on that, I think specifically with you, Gideon, and Max, in terms of helping people with discovery, right? In terms of discovering new NFTs, I think it's such an issue right now because there's so many NFT collections. We don't know where to look, right? We can see some rankings, but it's somewhat limited. What is kind of the next step in terms of figuring out how to best find new NFT collections that are interesting?
Yeah, so the approach that we've taken at Soul Sniper is really to look at liquidity and price action. It's not I would say it's probably not the fundamental analysis that you would want to do, in terms of understanding the Discord and the community and the Twitter, but I think feedback we've gotten from users why they really like to be able to do technical analysis is actually because at a glance you're able to understand what projects are people excited about, and then it's from discovering the price action and discovering the liquidity and understanding this is what everybody else is looking at. Then the users dive a little bit deeper in terms of then understanding the fundamentals of the project, what are they doing, what are they building, what's their Discord community and what their Twitter is because I think what's kind of the current NFT experience, or at least before I got there, was that you would have to sign up for 100 Discords and 100 follow 100 Twitter accounts and then try to parse through all of the information. And I think that's something that's really nice about kind of price action, is it really just simplifies all of that into a number, and then you can just glance at a table of numbers and then kind of from there zoom in on what you want to get into.
It's a great filtering mechanism essentially, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How does OpenSea think about this in terms of? I think you mentioned a little bit about curation, but how a ton of different NFT collections are onboarded every day. What is the best way to get all of these in front of users?
Yeah. And so ultimately, like, OpenSea in general is like, we're an open self-help marketplace, right? So people kind of just click around, right? We've added new categories. I think music NFTs was one of our most recent ones. We've added new marketplaces like Solana. So we're trying to really be catered to have the widest selection as possible. We do kind of very small editorial on like kind of what's featured. In terms of, I'm thinking of the wider ecosystem. You're starting to get apps like Premint, which I don't know if everybody knows, but basically you buy the NFT and it kind of tells you like, it's kind of like a launch pad for future NFTs, and they also help you, get the allow list or the whitelist for them. So I think we're going to start seeing more aggregator apps like that.
No, those are great points.